Hello, everyone. Let me tell you about today's story. Alpha was 35, Enigma was only 28. The Enigma worshipped the Alpha like sin. He did make him sit in front of the mirror, not to admire himself, but so the Enigma could admire what was his face, his mouth, his breath. The Enigma devoured him like starvation wore his name. When the Alpha isn't around, the Enigma didn't panic. He turned. He set the silence on fire. Men were sent. Cities were searched. Because peace did not exist without his alpha's skin against his. The Enigma didn't fall in love. The Enigma fell into obsession and possession. And if the world ever tried to touch him, the Enigma would not fight it. He will erase it. This story is filled with obsession, possessiveness, shocking plot twist, and of course, a happy ending. And also, if you want to listen to this story's epilogue, an extra scene, it is already uploaded in my Patreon. So you can check it out if you want. Link in the comment. Now let's dive into our story.
Chapter 1. The Billionaire's Secret. 10 years ago, an Enigma watched an Alpha standing alone in the rain. The Alpha was 25, the Enigma was only 18. The sky was pouring relentlessly, turning the streets into rivers of gray. The Alpha was completely soaked, yet instead of protecting himself, he was crouched on the sidewalk, holding his jacket above a tiny stray kitten that was shivering beneath him. Water dripped from his hair. His shoes were ruined. His clothes were drenched, and still, he was smiling, a bright, gentle smile as if the rain didn't matter, as if having nothing didn't matter, as if the entire world was beautiful simply because a small kitten would stay dry. For everyone else, it was a forgettable moment. For Zayden Mitchell, the Enigma, it became the moment his entire life stopped belonging to him entirely and started belonging to Xavier Kyle, his one and only Alpha. Not that the obsession had started there. No, the obsession had already existed long before that. That day merely poured fuel onto a fire that had been burning since childhood. Because Xavier Kyle had always been Zayden's favorite person. Always. Their families had been friends for generations. Xavier's parents and Zayden's parents practically treated each other like relatives. As a child, Zayden followed Xavier everywhere. The 7-year age gap never mattered. If Xavier sat down, Zayden sat beside him. If Xavier walked somewhere, Zayden followed. If Xavier spoke, Zayden listened. If anyone else spoke, that was optional. At one point, both families simply gave up trying to separate them. Little Zayden only listened to one person in the world, Xavier. And Xavier, despite being older, somehow always handled him with effortless patience. When Zayden was 12, he had grabbed Xavier's hand and declared with complete seriousness, "I'm going to marry you one day." Everyone in the room had laughed. Everyone except Zayden. Because he had meant every word. Xavier had simply laughed and ruffled his hair. "Sure, kid." To Xavier, it had been childish nonsense. To Zayden, it had become a promise. A sacred one. And Zayden never forgot promises. Never. Years passed. The obsession grew quietly, patiently. Photos, videos, schedules, records, favorite foods, favorite songs. The way Xavier laughed when something genuinely amused him. The way his nose wrinkled when annoyed. The way he unconsciously smiled at strangers. The way he always gave away his umbrella whenever someone needed it more than him. Every detail became sacred. Not because Zayden wanted to control him, but because Zayden genuinely believed Xavier Kyle was the most beautiful person the universe had ever created. At 35 years old, Xavier was now the CEO of Kyle Group. Successful, brilliant, kind, beloved, and unfortunately for everyone around him, an absolute menace. His employees loved him. They also suffered because of him. Xavier possessed a dangerous combination of intelligence, sarcasm, and endless creativity when it came to causing trouble. One week, he replaced all the office motivational posters with pictures of ducks wearing business suits. Another week, he convinced his executives that a ghost was haunting the accounting department. The entire company had spent 3 days investigating before discovering it had been Xavier all along. Again. Yet nobody could stay angry at him, not when he smiled so innocently afterward. Meanwhile, 28-year-old Zayden Mitchell had become the youngest billionaire enigma in the world. President of Mitchell Holdings. A man whose name alone could move stock markets. Cold, untouchable, aloof, dominant. People respected him. People feared him. Many considered him impossible to approach. The media called him a monster in a designer suit. The business world called him a genius. Nobody dared call him anything to his face. Except Xavier. Xavier called him dramatic. Then one day, both families announced something neither of them expected. An arranged marriage between Xavier Kyle and Zayden Mitchell. Everyone immediately turned toward Xavier, waiting for his reaction. To everyone's surprise, Xavier agreed without hesitation. Why? Because first, he wasn't dating anyone. Second, the business alliance would benefit both companies enormously. And third, he missed him. He missed the clingy little boy who used to trail after him like a shadow. 7 years had passed since they had separated. When Xavier was 28 and Zayden was 21, Zayden had left the country to build his own empire. From there, he created networks, businesses, and influence across the world. They occasionally exchanged messages, occasionally, very occasionally. Enough that Xavier knew Zayden was alive, not enough to know who he had become. So when the family gathering arrived and Xavier finally saw him again, he froze. The room fell silent. Xavier stared, then stared harder, then pointed. You? Zayden blinked. Me? The intern. Silence. The intern I've been bullying for 3 months. More silence. The one I made carry 50 boxes. The one I sent to buy coffee 6 times. The one who stayed late doing paperwork. He's the one who kept saying, "Yes, Mr. Kyle." The entire room exploded. Sophia Kyle nearly dropped her tea. Victoria Mitchell started laughing uncontrollably. Richard Mitchell looked ready to record the moment forever. Because standing before Xavier wasn't just the billionaire Zayden Mitchell. It was also his former intern assistant. The intern who had mysteriously appeared at Kyle Group 3 months ago. The intern Xavier had been tormenting with endless assignments and sarcastic comments. The intern who had somehow never complained. Not once. Because it had never been an intern. It had been Zayden. The future billionaire president had disguised himself as an assistant simply because he wanted to stay near Xavier. Xavier looked horrified. You're telling me I made a billionaire carry office supplies? Yes. I sent you for coffee. 6 times. I made you organize 3 years of files. You did. Xavier buried his face in his hands. Oh my God. Before he could continue, Zayden stood, walked across the room, and wrapped both arms around him tightly, possessively. Relieved. As though he had finally found something precious he thought he might lose. I missed you. The feared billionaire sounded less like an untouchable enigma and more like a lost puppy. Xavier stared. Then laughed. Because there he was, the same clingy Zayden, the same possessive boy, the same person who used to refuse to leave his side. The lion the world feared had become a puppy again. And somehow, Xavier found that he didn't mind at all. Chapter 2. The Lion Who Became a Puppy. After their marriage was fixed, they started dating. Dating Zayden Mitchell was not what Xavier expected. At all. The world saw a monster. A cold billionaire enigma whose name alone terrified executives. A man so intimidating that board members forgot how to breathe whenever he entered a room. A man who could destroy companies with a single phone call. Xavier saw a clingy disaster. 3 days into their relationship, Xavier learned this the hard way. His phone died during a meeting. For 10 minutes, just 10. When he finally charged it again, there were 27 missed calls, 53 text messages, 3 voicemails, and 1 message from Noah, his best friend, and Zayden's COO. Noah, please answer your boyfriend before he declares a national emergency. Xavier blinked, then opened Zayden's messages. Where are you? Are you okay? Why aren't you answering? Xavier. My love. Baby, please answer. I am respectfully losing my mind. Xavier immediately called him. The call connected in half a second. Hello? Silence, then a sniffle. Xavier froze. Are you crying? No? You literally sniffled. No. Zayden. Another sniffle. Maybe. Xavier burst out laughing. You cried because my phone died? I thought something happened. It was 10 minutes. It was the longest 10 minutes of my life. Noah later informed him that Zayden had called him 17 times. The company security team 6 times, and Xavier's mother twice, just to ask if Xavier was alive. You need therapy. I have you. That wasn't a compliment. It is to me. The more they dated, the more Xavier realized something. The terrifying Zayden Mitchell simply didn't exist around him. The cold billionaire vanished completely. In his place was a giant puppy disguised as a corporate overlord. A very possessive puppy. One that constantly wanted hugs, constantly wanted attention, and constantly wanted to scent Xavier. One morning, Xavier walked into his office and found Zidane sitting in his chair. "What are you doing?" "Waiting." "For?" "You. You have your own company." "I know." "Then why are you here?" Zidane looked genuinely confused. "Because you're here." Xavier stared, then slowly turned around. "Noah." "Yes?" "Come get your billionaire." "I don't think he belongs to me anymore." After their wedding, Xavier discovered something even stranger. A habit Zidane had never shown while they were dating. Whenever Zidane became stressed, he would drag Xavier into their bedroom, sit him in front of a giant mirror, then sit behind him and stare for hours, not speaking, not moving, just watching, memorizing, studying, tracing every feature with his eyes, as if he was afraid one day he would forget, as if looking at Xavier was another form of breathing. The first time it happened, Xavier lasted 20 minutes before asking, "What are you doing?" "Relaxing." "By staring at me?" "Yes." "You're weird." "I know." The second time it happened, Xavier caught Zidane smiling at his reflection. "What now?" "You're beautiful." "You've told me that 7 times today." I wasn't finished. The third time it happened, Xavier fell asleep. 3 hours later, he woke up. Zidane was still staring. "Have you moved?" "No." "Blink?" "Occasionally." "You're terrifying." Zidane smiled. "Only for you." Then came what Noah would later call the corporate hijacking incident. One of Zidane's largest corporations suddenly changed direction. Overnight. Without warning. Without explanation. The electronics division disappeared. The marketing department disappeared. Half the company's products disappeared. Instead, they began producing Xavier's favorite snacks, Xavier's favorite tea, Xavier-themed gift boxes, Xavier-approved furniture, Xavier-approved blankets, Xavier-approved coffee mugs. The headquarters cafeteria even introduced a menu called the Xavier Special. Lucas, Zidane's exhausted right-hand man, finally snapped, "Sir, yes? Why does this company exist?" Zidane looked confused by the question. "To make Xavier happy." Silence. "Sir?" "Yes?" "This company is worth $6 billion. Correct. And it exists to make your husband happy?" "Obviously." Lucas stared at him for a full minute, then quietly walked away, questioning every life choice that had led him to this moment. Meanwhile, Xavier found the entire situation hilarious, which naturally meant he made it worse. One day he secretly replaced Zidane's expensive office portrait with a giant picture of a potato. Nobody noticed, for 3 days. On the 4th day, Zidane finally saw it, looked at the potato, looked at Xavier, then sighed. "My love." "Yes?" "Did you replace my portrait?" "No." "The potato is wearing my suit." "The potato also has my watch." The potato has my company ID." Zidane rubbed his forehead. Xavier started laughing so hard he nearly fell off the couch. And despite being one of the most powerful men in the world, Zidane left the potato portrait hanging. Because Xavier liked it. Somewhere along the way, Xavier finally understood the truth. People thought Zidane worshipped power, money, influence, control. They were wrong. Completely wrong. Zidane Mitchell only worshipped one thing, one person, one smile, one laugh. Xavier Kyle. The terrifying enigma feared by the entire world became soft whenever Xavier was around. The lion became a puppy. The monster became a devotee. And every day, Zidane happily surrendered to it. Because if loving Xavier this much was insanity, then Zidane had absolutely no interest in being cured. Chapter 3. 30 Hours of Madness. It had been almost 10 months since Xavier and Zidane got married. And somehow, Zidane's obsession was getting worse. Not better, worse. Every day. At first, Xavier thought it was cute, then concerning, then deeply concerning, then mildly terrifying. One morning, Xavier woke up to find Zidane staring at him. Again. "Good morning." "Good morning. How long have you been awake?" 3 hours. I didn't want to disturb your sleep." Another day, Xavier sneezed once. Once, a single sneeze. 3 minutes later, Zidane had summoned a private doctor, a nutritionist, a respiratory specialist, and somehow, a veterinarian. Why is there a veterinarian here? I was stressed. Why? You sneezed. Xavier finally decided enough was enough. His husband needed help. Or at least a reality check. Thus was born the worst plan in Xavier Kyle history, which was saying something, because Xavier had once convinced an entire office that their coffee machine was haunted. He left a note, a simple note, going on a short volunteer trip, back soon. Then he left. What Xavier didn't know was that his phone would die, completely. 30 minutes later. And what Zayden didn't know was that Xavier was perfectly safe for 30 harmless hours. 30 hours. Something inside Zayden Mitchell broke. The moment he discovered Xavier wasn't answering his phone, he called. Once, twice, 10 times, 50 times, 100 times. Then he called Noah. Where's Xavier? How would I know? You're his best friend. That doesn't mean I'm his GPS. Then he called Xavier's parents. No. Sophia sighed. We don't know where he is. Then he called his own parents. Victoria immediately hung up. She already knew what was happening. 3 hours later, the country entered chaos. Private investigators appeared. Airports were monitored, harbors were searched, road checkpoints increased, thousands of personnel mobilized. Government contacts received calls, private intelligence agencies received calls. Military contacts received calls. People received calls they still couldn't explain years later. Lucas, Zayden's right-hand man and security chief, walked into Zayden's office and immediately regretted it. A giant screen displayed hundreds of surveillance feeds. Maps, tracking systems, facial recognition software, satellite imagery. Lucas blinked. Sir, yes. Are we looking for a terrorist? No. A criminal? No. A foreign spy? No. Silence. Then Zayden pointed at Xavier's photo. I can't find my husband. Lucas slowly walked back out. News channels exploded. Breaking news. A mysterious national-level emergency has reportedly been declared by billionaire Zayden Mitchell. Sources suggest multiple intelligence networks have been activated. No official statement has been released. Nobody knew the emergency was simply, I can't find my alpha. Meanwhile, the man causing international panic was doing absolutely fine. Xavier sat in a public library, wearing sunglasses, eating a burrito, using a prepaid burner phone, connected to a VPN, completely unaware that Zayden had just purchased an entire building nearby. When Noah finally found him through pure luck, he nearly screamed. Do you know what your husband is doing? No. He bought a satellite company. He bought 2. He is currently negotiating for a 3rd. Xavier slowly lowered his burrito. That's dramatic. He hasn't slept in 30 hours. Oh. 5 minutes later, Xavier decided perhaps the prank had gone far enough, so he escaped Noah. Again. And relocated to the one place nobody would think to search. The Kyle Mitchell family island. Which unfortunately lasted 6 hours. Because Zayden eventually found him. Of course he did. At sunset, Xavier was relaxing on a beach chair, holding a drink, watching the ocean, living his best life. Then a helicopter landed. Xavier looked up. Oh. Out stepped Zayden, hair messy, eyes red, suit wrinkled, looking like a billionaire who had personally fought several wars. For a full minute, he simply stood there, staring, making sure Xavier was real, alive, safe. Then he walked forward, wrapped both arms around Xavier, and sighed. The longest sigh in human history. The sigh of a man who had just survived 30 hours of absolute psychological torture. You gave me a heart attack. I left a note. You disappeared. I went on vacation. You vanished. I was literally on our island. You were missing. Xavier rolled his eyes. You searched the whole country. You were gone. You bought satellites. You weren't answering. You mobilized thousands of people. You vanished. I was eating burritos. Silence. Zayden looked offended. You could have been eating dangerous burritos. Xavier stared, then laughed so hard he nearly fell off the chair. Unfortunately, Zayden wasn't finished. I haven't slept. That's your fault. I cried. You what? Zayden buried his face in Xavier's shoulder. I thought something happened to you. Xavier immediately stopped laughing, because despite all the insanity, Despite all the helicopters, the satellites, the intelligence networks, the billion-dollar manhunt. The truth was painfully simple. Zidane had been terrified. Not because he thought Xavier left him, not because his pride was hurt, not because he wanted control, but because for 30 hours, he couldn't confirm the most important person in his world was safe. Xavier sighed, then wrapped his arms around his ridiculous husband. "You are impossible." Zidane nodded. "Probably." Then after a pause he added, "Please never do that again." Xavier grinned. "No promises." Somewhere in the distance, Lucas seriously considered resigning. Again, because he already knew, the next time Xavier had an idea, the entire country was going to suffer. Chapter 4. The Architect of Obsession. After the infamous 30 Hours of Madness incident, life slowly returned to normal. Or at least as normal as life could be when one spouse was Xavier Kyle and the other was Zidane Mitchell. Their days settled into a comfortable routine. Morning coffee together, work, dinner, endless teasing from Xavier, endless devotion from Zidane, and a very healthy married life that left both their mothers pretending not to hear certain conversations at breakfast. Months passed peacefully. Until one afternoon, Xavier accidentally discovered the greatest secret of his husband's life. It happened while he was cleaning. A rare event, mostly because he was looking for snacks, a hidden door, a hidden room, and inside, evidence. Years and years of evidence. Photos, videos, records, schedules, reports, surveillance archives, security plans, private investigations, folders, entire databases, and every single one of them was about him. Xavier stared, then stared harder, then burst into laughter. Oh my God. The deeper he looked, the worse it became. One project detailed safer routes Xavier could take to work. Another tracked restaurants he liked. Another listed every allergy, preference, habit, and routine Xavier had developed over the years. Then Xavier discovered something that made him freeze. The first foundations of Mitchell Holdings, the earliest business plans, the original private security network, the connections, the influence, the intelligence infrastructure, all of it traced back to one purpose: finding Xavier faster, protecting Xavier better, keeping Xavier safer. For years, people had assumed Zidane built his empire for power, for money, for prestige. The truth? The empire existed because Zidane loved him. Xavier laughed so hard tears formed in his eyes. His husband wasn't obsessed with power. His husband was obsessed with him. That evening, Zidane returned home and immediately sensed something was wrong. Xavier was sitting inside the hidden room, surrounded by evidence, surrounded by decades of devotion. Zidane froze, for the first time in years. The feared billionaire looked genuinely terrified. His eyes widened, then widened even more, like a fish discovering taxes. "You saw everything?" Xavier giggled. "I did." Silence. A very long silence. Then Zidane quietly sat beside him. "I can't imagine a world where you don't exist beside me." The confession was simple, honest, raw, and Xavier's smile softened. Because he already knew. The room fell quiet. Not awkward, comfortable, warm, like home. Life continued. Their parents eventually moved into the mansion for a few months. Officially to spend time together. Unofficially, because everyone enjoyed watching Xavier and Zidane's nonsense. Then one morning, Xavier wasn't feeling well. "You're going to the doctor." "No." "Yes." "No." "Yes." The argument lasted 20 minutes. Eventually, all four parents teamed up against him. Xavier lost, naturally. 3 hours later, everyone sat inside the hospital, waiting. Then the doctor smiled. "Congratulations." Silence. "Congratulations for what?" Xavier asked. The doctor looked confused. "Your pregnancy." The room exploded. "Sophia," Xavier's mother cried. "Victoria," Zidane's mother cried. "Richard," Xavier's father hugged Ethan, Zidane's father. Ethan hugged everyone. Meanwhile, Zidane looked completely frozen. "Zidane." No response. "Zidane." Still nothing. "Did he die?" "No," Lucas said calmly. "His brain has simply stopped functioning." For 3 straight days, Zidane smiled at random moments, for no reason. His assistant once walked into a meeting and found him staring at an ultrasound picture. "Sir? Our baby." "Yes, sir." "Our baby." Still, "Yes, sir. Our baby." Lucas left, immediately. Meanwhile, Xavier became the proudest pregnant parent in existence. Our child will inherit my business talent. Absolutely. And my sense of humor, of course. And my intelligence. Naturally. And my good looks. Without question. And my ability to be a menace. Zayden nodded. Especially that. The pregnancy journey became a disaster. A very funny disaster. At 3 months, Xavier wanted watermelon at 3 in the morning. At 4 months, he wanted pancakes covered in chocolate. At 5 months, he cried because a penguin documentary was emotional. At 6 months, he threatened to fire Zayden because the baby kicked during a board meeting. The baby works for me. That's not how babies work. Are you sure? No. By 7 months, Zayden had become even more attentive than usual, which nobody thought was possible. One night, they fell asleep together. The mansion was quiet. The world was peaceful. Except Xavier couldn't sleep, so he rolled over and looked at his husband. Zayden was sleeping peacefully, for once. No business calls, no security reports, no meetings, just Zayden. Xavier smiled, then gently traced his fingers across his husband's face. Softly, lovingly, kissing his forehead, his cheek, his nose. And because Zayden appeared asleep, Xavier finally confessed secrets he had never intended to tell anyone. His voice was barely above a whisper. You know? His fingers brushed through Zayden's hair. I knew. Silence. I knew you were obsessed with me from the beginning. Another soft laugh escaped him. That day years ago I was soaked in rain wasn't an accident. His hand moved to his stomach. I knew you were watching me that day. His eyes softened. I smiled on purpose at you. Silence. The bedroom windows? A grin. I left them open. I knew you always came to my room between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. to watch me sleep, even though you were away from me. The photos? A chuckle. I knew you were always taking my pictures secretly, so I always gave you the perfect angles. His voice grew softer. The disappearance? Or you can say self-volunteered trip? A mischievous smile. I wanted to see how far you'd go. He laughed quietly. I think I broke half the country. His hand found Zayden's. I wasn't trapped by your obsession. His eyes closed. I liked it. Another pause. I wanted more. His voice became sleepy. I wanted to see your limits. A final whisper. I think I was just as crazy as you. Within minutes, Xavier drifted into deep sleep. The room became silent. Completely silent. Then slowly, Zayden opened his eyes. Wide awake. He had awakened the moment Xavier started tracing his face, and listened to every single word, every confession, every secret, every revelation. For a long moment, he simply stared at his sleeping husband, at the alpha carrying their child, at the man who had become the center of his universe. His expression softened into something impossibly tender. One hand rested on Xavier's pregnant belly. The other brushed through his hair. Then Zayden finally answered, softly, quietly, like a prayer. I knew every game. His lips curved into a small smile. I knew from the beginning. He kissed Xavier's forehead. You were never trapped by my obsession. Another kiss. You built it with me. His thumb gently brushed Xavier's cheek. You became the center of my world long before I became yours. His gaze dropped to their child, then returned to Xavier. I love you, my alpha. A kiss. I would surrender to you 100 times. Another kiss. 1,000 times. His forehead rested against Xavier's. For the rest of my life. And neither of them would ever reveal the truth. That Xavier knew, and Zayden knew that Xavier knew. And Xavier didn't know that Zayden knew he knew. And Zayden didn't know that Xavier would never tell him. Two masterminds, two architects, playing the same game, building the same obsession, fueling the same love. For years, together. Outside the mansion, government still feared Zayden Mitchell. Billionaires still feared him. Entire corporations still trembled when his name appeared. But every evening he returned home, placed his head in Xavier's lap, listened to his husband's endless nonsense, and became nothing more than a man hopelessly in love. Because the terrifying enigma the world feared had only one faith, only one religion, only one God. And his name was Xavier Kyle.